The great department store shone each evening like a palace of glass and gold. Light spilled from its tall windows onto the busy street, where carriages rolled past and well-dressed women paused to admire the displays. Inside, behind long counters stacked with gloves and ribbons, stood rows of young salesgirls smiling, patient, graceful. Among them was Nancy Ashburton. Nancy was different from the others. She was quiet, steady, and careful with her words. While some girls whispered about suitors and silk dresses, Nancy focused on her work. She folded gloves neatly, greeted customers politely, and returned each evening to her modest boarding house. Her closest companion in the store was Louise Trur, lively and full of excitement. "Nancy," Louise said one afternoon, adjusting a lace collar before a mirror, "you live like a nun. No parties, no gentlemen callers. What's the fun in that?" Nancy smiled faintly. "Fun doesn't pay rent." Louise laughed. "Neither does seriousness." But Nancy carried a secret no one at the store knew. Each evening after work, she changed her plain salesgirl dress for a simple but neat outfit and stepped into another world. In a quiet part of the city, she met Mr. Gilbert, a young man of ambition and pride. He believed Nancy worked as a stenographer in a respectable office, and she had never corrected him. One night, as they walked beneath dim street lamps, Gilbert spoke earnestly. "Nancy, I am building something for the future, a business of my own. It will take time, but I'll succeed." "I believe you will," she replied softly. He stopped walking and faced her. "When I marry, it must be to a woman of refinement, someone removed from the distractions of certain workplaces." Her heart tightened. "What workplaces?" "Department stores," he answered firmly. "Too much vanity, too much display. Girls forget simplicity there." Nancy forced a calm expression. "Not all girls." Gilbert shook his head. "I've seen enough. I want my wife untouched by the world." She lowered her gaze. The truth trembled on her lips, but fear held it back. Back at the store, life buzzed with gossip and customers. Mr. Grimes, the stern floor walker, monitored every movement. Wealthy ladies inspected gloves with critical eyes. Young men lingered near the counters longer than necessary. Louise thrived in the attention. "There's a gentleman who visits just to see me," she whispered excitedly one afternoon. "He says I brighten his day." Nancy folded silk gloves carefully. "Be careful, Louise." "Oh, don't worry. He might even propose." Nancy glanced at her friend. "Does he know who you really are?" Louise hesitated, then laughed it away. Meanwhile, Gilbert's business faced difficulties. One evening, he appeared troubled. "Nancy," he said slowly, "I've been offered a partnership, but the investor wants to meet you first." "Me?" she asked, startled. "Yes. He believes a man's future wife reflects his character." A chill passed through her. "What is his name?" she whispered. Gilbert replied calmly, "Mr. Nathaniel Hinkle." The name struck her like thunder. Mr. Hinkle was the owner of the very department store where she worked, and if he recognized her, everything would unravel. Nancy walked home that night under flickering gas lamps, her thoughts heavy with dread. The truth she had hidden so carefully was now standing at her door, and it would not remain silent much longer. Nancy barely slept at night. The name echoed in her mind, Mr. Nathaniel Hinkle, the owner of the glittering department store, the man who walked the floors occasionally, observing the salesgirls with sharp but distant eyes. He had likely passed her counter dozens of times. If he recognized her, Gilbert would know the truth. The next evening, Gilbert arrived with unusual excitement. "It's arranged," he said. "Tomorrow night, dinner at Mr. Hinkle's residence." Nancy's fingers tightened around her gloves. "Tomorrow, yes. He's eager to meet the woman who inspires my ambition." Inspiration, the word stung. At the store the next day, Nancy felt every movement watched. Mr. Grimes barked instructions. Customers demanded attention. Louise fluttered from counter to counter, flushed with her own romantic drama. "Nancy, you look pale." Louise whispered, "Are you ill?" "No," Nancy answered softly. "Just tired." Louise studied her. That serious gentleman of yours again." Nancy did not reply. Late in the afternoon, a murmur spread across the floor. Mr. Hinkle himself had arrived. He walked slowly, inspecting displays, speaking briefly with managers. When he reached Nancy's counter, her breath nearly stopped. He glanced at her only a second. "Sales steady here?" he asked Mr. Grimes. "Yes, sir," the floor walker replied stiffly. Nancy kept her eyes lowered. Mr. Hinkle moved on. That brief moment unsettled her even more. Had he recognized her? Or had she always been too invisible to notice? The following evening, dressed carefully in her simplest but most refined gown, Nancy stood beside Gilbert at the grand entrance of Mr. Hinkle's townhouse. Crystal chandeliers glowed within. Servants moved silently. Gilbert squeezed her hand. "This is important, I know," she said. They were led into a stately drawing room. Moments later, Mr. Hinkle entered. Nancy felt the world narrow. His eyes rested on her. There was a pause. "Miss Ashburton," he said politely. "A pleasure." Gilbert smiled proudly. "You have met Mr. Hinkle's gaze lingered thoughtful, unreadable. "I believe I have seen the young lady before," he said slowly. "But I meet many faces." Nancy felt her pulse hammer. Dinner proceeded with careful conversation. Mr. Hinkle questioned Gilbert about business plans, investments, discipline. "A man must choose wisely," he said at last, "in work and in life." Gilbert nodded confidently. "I agree completely." Mr. Hinkle turned to Nancy. "And you, Miss Ashburton, what do you believe?" Her throat tightened. "I believe," she said quietly, "that honest work is never shameful, no matter where it is done." A silence followed. Gilbert looked puzzled. Mr. Hinkle's expression softened almost imperceptibly. "Well spoken," he replied. When dinner ended, Gilbert stepped aside briefly with the investor, Disque. Seeing figures and contracts, Mr. Hinkle approached Nancy alone. "You feared I would expose you," he said quietly. She met his eyes for the first time. "Yes." He nodded once. "You are one of my most reliable employees. I value loyalty and effort," she whispered. "Why did you say nothing?" "Because," he replied calmly, "it was not my truth to tell." Gilbert returned, pleased and triumphant. "It is settled," he announced. "The partnership is secured." Outside, beneath the cool night sky, he turned to Nancy. "Mr. Hinkle seemed impressed with you." She stopped walking. "Gilbert," she said steadily, "there is something you must know." And this time she did not let fear silence her.